Hello, everybody.
Hello, Luther. Good to see you.
Hello, Luther.
Yes, I think we can start at about now. It's 9 o'clock a.m. in Monrovia. So we want to welcome all of you participants. Thank you for taking time off your busy schedule to join us this morning. As you know, this is an international webinar focusing on inclusive business, discussing on how to ensure international cooperation actors on the rights of people with disabilities. So, firstly, I'd like to state that I'm impressed about the contribution from everyone. We received quite a number of interested stakeholders who want to participate. So, I'm quite sure during the course of the event, we'll see more people coming through. We hope that at the end of the webinar, we can be able to have a common ground, have a clear or better understanding about how to collaborate on all fronts to ensure an inclusive world. I'd just like to go through quickly our program. As you've received already, the program will be in two folds. Part one is going to be in two parts, and part one will be looking at the DASU project experience, gathering perspectives from different panelists, different stakeholders. And then afterwards, we'll entertain questions and answers for at most 10 minutes. And then part two will be looking at mainstreaming disabilities in livelihood intervention, looking at actual best practices, again, from different stakeholders involved in the DASO project. So just to go through some quick ground rules, just to inform you that at the end of the presentation, there will be questions and answers, and then all of the presentations will be shared with those of you who have signed up for the event. If you have questions, you can post them in the chat room, or alternatively, you may raise your hands to be recognized. And then lastly, please keep the microphone muted if you are not speaking, so that you hear the other panelists speaking clearly. The link will be shared as a share. So please, if you are following the event, please mute your mic so that we cannot get distorted with the interaction. So we'll go straightly into the program. The first session, which has to do with DASU Inclusive Sustainable Livelihood, learning from the DASU project experience in Liberia. And as I inform you, this session will inform the audience about the DASU project, what, when, how it started, as a good example of a talent disability inclusive development cooperation. And it also intends to introduce the theme of disability and labor market. So for that, we'll be looking at the project in the broader Liberian context, from civil war to COVID-19. And for that presentation, we'll be calling on our country director, Milani Oyi, who will be presenting on that topic. But before she does that, I just like to quickly give a brief of who Milani Oyi is. So as you may be aware, she's the country director of IFO Liberia, basically in charge of general program management and coordination of IFO Liberia donor projects. She's a Dutch national and has extensive experience in managing international development projects, in particular in Liberia, where she has been living for several years. Milani is very well committed to quality program delivery and placing solid program management at the core of her work. So with not much ado, I would just like to quickly call on Milani Oyi, Country Director of IFO Liberia, to present on the topic DASU project, looking at the broader Liberian context. Welcome, Milani.
Thank you very much, Luther, for the introduction, and welcome to everyone. Thank you for taking the time for being with us here today. I will share my PowerPoint with you now. Okay, I hope you'll be able to see it. Okay,
Yes,
good. All right. So starting with the background, the Republic of Liberia is a small nation on the west coast of Africa. It's the oldest independent republic in Africa, founded in 1847. And it was colonized by former slaves from the United States who returned to Africa in the early 19th century. Then, until 1979, Liberia's economy was among the more developed and fastest growing in sub-Saharan Africa. The two Liberian civil wars that ravaged the country in 1989 until 2003 destroyed Liberia's political, economic, social, and democratic institutions and left thousands of Liberians displaced and also many disabled. About 8% of the populations lost their lives during that time. After the war, by 2013, the economy has grown by 8.7%, according to the World Bank. But then in 2014, Liberia was affected by the Ebola outbreak. More than 4,800 Liberians had died from the disease and the healthcare system collapsed. Liberia's GDP growth collapsed too, to 0% in 2015. So the crisis had a devastating effect on the economy, and it still is challenging now during even the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Liberia deals with high inflation rates that reduce purchasing power, for example, and consequently also the welfare of the people. Liberia rectified the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in 2012. According to Liberia's initial state party report on the UN CRPD submitted in 2020, coordination with people with disabilities, consultation and participation remains low, especially relating to plans, strategies and protocols in disaster risk reduction and humanitarian emergencies. So in conclusion, after 14 years of conflict, Liberia continues to face many challenges, such as high level of poverty and unemployment, especially among the youth with disabilities, many of whom were former combatants, for example, low level of education and vocational skills, a limited social infrastructure and protection system. And also the Ebola crisis and the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has had a major impact on Liberia's capacity to run different services, including those for the persons with disabilities. So the current population of Liberia is estimated at about 5.2 million people. Unfortunately, exact statistics about disability in Liberia are out of date. But the last national census was in 2008, presented 3.70% prevalence, while SIDA, the International Development Cooperation Agency, estimated in 2014 that due to the civil war and the Ebola outbreak, the population of persons with disabilities is more likely closer to 20%. So a high percentage out of this number is caused by the conflict, which left many persons also with physical disabilities and trauma and other mental health issues. So the situation of people with disabilities in Liberia can be best described as challenging. And the Liberian Disabled People Organizations, can you still see my screen?
no.
No, I think it flips.
Yeah, now it's showing.
Yes. There we go. Okay, so the situation of people with disabilities in Liberia can be best described as challenging. The Liberian Disabled People Organization estimates that 99% of persons with disabilities live in extreme poverty, mainly because they are excluded from education, skills, training, work, from generation opportunities. They continue to be marginalized and stigmatized. So in 2017, IFO Liberia conducted a feasibility study and decided to develop the DAZU project with the aim to support DPOs in becoming strategic actors of the Liberian civil society, so they can create significant and sustainable chances in the Liberian disability sector. So the DASO project is a 3-year project that started in May 2018, and that actually ends right now, tomorrow, on the 1st of today, sorry, on the 1st of September. The donor is the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation, and the project was implemented in Gran Gide, Nimba, Bon counties, and also Monrovia. Then we have project partners, National Union of Organization of the Disabled, NUOD, it's the umbrella organization of DPOs here in Liberia, and the National Commission on Disabilities, NCD. That's a statutory body of the government of Liberia and is responsible for disability-related activities in the country. And in Italy, we have Italian Network on Disability and Development, RIT, and the Department of Economics and Management at the University of Florence. Another partner on the project is the Business Startup Center, Monrovia. So in summary, the DASO project aimed to achieve 3 project outcomes related to the capacity building of NUOD and DPOs, so they can actually participate in policy making, and also the improvement of economic independence and social participation of persons with disabilities, and the facilitation of the inclusion of mental health users in economic and social development initiatives. So under result 1, we have several activities, one of which is the diagnostic study that was published in November 2018. And it was done to assess the institutional capacities of DPOs in Liberia. And that study supported the development of the training program for DPOs and NUOD. So the focus areas were networking, advocacy, and fundraising, and the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and Sustainable Development Goals. So the training courses followed then, actually in institutional and inclusive business training. And after that, also feedback meetings to follow up on the draft annual advocacy plan that they produced during these trainings. So at the end of the training, NUOD and DPOs were expected to be better equipped to engage in a national and regional political dialogue. And the other activities mentioned provided that platform an exchange of good practices with African platforms, but also the national and county seminars in Liberia and the communication program, awareness raising by means of radio and community engagement as well. So the final evaluation for DASO concludes that under result 1, all DPOs have notably improved their skills and capacity for advocacy. They are more aware of people with disabilities' rights, and they participate more frequently and more efficiently in scheduled meetings with policymakers in the counties. The DPOs also improved their internal governance mechanisms, and most of them are also officially registered at the government. They've become more democratic and also more inclusive of people with different disabilities. Then under result 2, a baseline survey was conducted on social economy that was performed by DISI, and that was to map out Liberia's social economic ecosystem. That these product activities, or actually this result, aims to improve small and medium enterprises capacities through training courses, so they can develop business plans for the creation of sustainable startups. And activities included skills assessments, for example, but also training courses of social entrepreneurship, business skills training that included a business plan competition. And then startups were actually created and launched just before the COVID-19 pandemic, actually. 15 startups were selected, and they received seed funding consisting of a grant of $1,000 and a loan that was interest-free, ranging from $800 to $5,000, depending on the need of the business. So for the result 2, the final evaluation concluded that workshop loans and business support gave people with disabilities a sense of competence, confidence, and self-worth that they had not experienced before. Consequently, the members of the startups were also more included and respected within their communities. At the end of the project, 13 out of 15 startups are still active, and the majority of the startups are functioning effectively. So, and then the final results. The project uses also innovative methodologies to improve the social inclusion of people with mental health problems, who are usually the most marginalized in socioeconomic development processes. And activities included emancipatory research, and soon Deepak will talk more about that later, so I'm not going much into that. And then the community engagement on mental health. And this included the training of 20 community health assistants in Nimba County to increase the commitment of the community on the issue of mental health and to guarantee the involvement of people with mental health problems into self-employment activities, for example. So the final evaluation of the DASO project states the inclusion of mental health users can be considered as a success. 7 out of the 9 DPOs that were interviewed now include people with mental disabilities. Also, mental disabilities have moved from being a health issue towards becoming a disability issue. Then this brings me to the end of my presentation. I would like to close by summarizing a few points, but that's what kind of impact the project actually made, also as mentioned in the final evaluation report. And that is that the immediate impact on people with disabilities is that they have gained sense of self-worth, confidence and respect in their families and communities. And this changes the way in which people with disabilities are perceived by their communities. And that is a vital step towards more inclusion and participation. Then another point that was highlighted in the report is that on policymakers, local authorities were previously less aware of disability issues and the rights of people with disabilities. But the DPOs in the DASO project have achieved several policy successes, and the project has opened the door towards more tangible policy results in the future. So the final impact that I would like to highlight is the relief that the DASO project has brought to household members of persons with disabilities. Households with disabled members are more likely to suffer from multidimensional poverty, including food insecurity, lack of access to education, for example, and others. So when a person with disabilities become more economically and socially independent, it also restores the balance for the rest of the household. So this was what I had prepared for you, and I'd like to thank you for your time and your attention today.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Quite detailed presentation. We want to thank you for that. Again, we want to welcome for those of you who have just joined. So my name is Luther Mendin, and basically my role here is to moderate the session. So Melanie basically laid the basis of our interaction, looking at the situation in Liberia, the historical background, the DASO project. So I'm quite sure during the course of our presentation, you took down notes. And as I informed you, at the end of the first session, there will be a question and answer of which we can ask Melanie for that. But before we go to our next session, I'll quickly give a brief background about IFO. So IFO is an Italian international organization that has a network organizations of groups spread across all over Italy. And the organization was founded in 1961 thanks to the French journalist Raoul Folero, who lived all his life fighting for persons affected with leprosy. So IFO's programs are actually spread across the world, in particular Brazil, Mongolia, Mozambique, Liberia, and other parts. And in Liberia, it started as far back as 1997. Then during the Civil War, providing relief items to people affected with disabilities. So in 2010, we had our presence in Liberia, basically promoting the community-based inclusive development approach, working along with all institutional and national partners to promote the well-being of people with disabilities. So over the years, our project has had a far-reaching impact, ranging from education, health, livelihood, and socio-economic empowerment. So I want to thank you and again, welcome. Our next session will be looking at a short video that we produced to showcase the impact of the DASU project. And in that video, you will hear beneficiaries explaining vividly what the project impacts were. And we also developed a novel graphic to showcase a female protagonist of the project, a person who was affected with leprosy, who laid all the odds how to utilize the services that was promoted by IFO to include that inclusion. So we will be showing briefly the video, and then we'll scroll through the novel graphic for your viewing. Thank you.
Negative perception against people with disabilities is gradually being dispelled. And people with disabilities are moving forward in terms of engaging local and national authorities on their own issues. And even when it comes to county development fund, they are very included. Besides that, few of them who were successful in the start of business, we are seeing that they are starting to change. Also, they keep us together because many times when you are not doing anything or something to help yourself, you get together. I'm proud of myself now because I can tell my children I'm going to work. The video people play a pivotal role when it comes to industrial activities in Franklin County. It helps to change the people's attitude. The programs are all in line with what we see in the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
So thank you. That was just a preview of the full video, 16 minutes video that we have showcasing the impact of our DASU project. The next aspect is a real life story for this former leprosy patient. And we thought to do this through a graphic novel to showcase her story, quite a tragic story. And she's currently living in Woolstown in Nima County. And through all of the different interactions, she withstood the test of time. And now Mother Toba is one of a resilient members in her communities. She was a beneficiary of our startup intervention. And then now she's been seen as a resource person in the community she lives in. The story will be shared again with all of our participants, but just to tell you that what is always important to create a space for people with disabilities to thrive, and you'll be surprised about the services and the contribution they can provide to the communities. So it's a very detailed story. We just thought to scroll through to see the visibility of what we want to portray. And then again, as I said at the end, the video, the novel will be shown to all of you. So she had a short story for IFO, thanking IFO basically for the opportunity that has been provided, and also seen as a resource person in her community, managing business, looking at her family needs. Thank you so much. Our next session will be looking at mainstreaming of the rights of persons with disabilities and support to inclusive access to employment. And this is going to be an experience of an ACT-funded project in Sudan, Khartoum, as part of the project Bridging the Gap 2. And this will be done by Danielle Maniri, who's the head of program of the INLAB project, Economic Empowerment and Working Inclusion of People with Disabilities in Sudan, Khartoum. But briefly, I'd just like to inform you about who Danielle is. So he graduated in International Cooperation Policies, Development Policies, Masters, basically in Human Security, postgraduate Master in ICT for Development. He has professional experience in development in humanitarian context. From 2018, he led the Country Coordination Office in Sudan as part of the Bridging the Gap 2 project that was funded by the Italian Agency for Development Cooperation. He's basically responsible for social inclusion and poverty alleviation initiatives. Without much ado, I'd like to welcome you, Daniel, to the platform.
Thank you very much, Luther. And if I can, I will share also my presentation. All right, I hope you can see my presentation. I just assume that you can see my presentation, so thank you very much.
Yes, it's visible.
Perfect. Thank you very much, and for a nice presentation that you have done with me. And thank you also to the introduction from Melanie. I'm starting to see now the connections that we might have with our initiatives. I must say that at the beginning, I had to look for some connection points, but of course, with this introduction that you've done, I can see that we have several common points. So I will just introduce briefly the initiative that we are running here in Khartoum and in Sudan. And then, of course, we might see together if there are interesting points to discuss further. So as it was mentioned, the initiative here in Sudan is within the framework of the Italian cooperation that, of course, operates under the international frameworks of the CRPD that was signed and ratified by Italy in 2009. Curiously enough, it was the same year of the ratification of Sudan, of the CRPD. And of course, we operate under the European framework for disability inclusion strategy, which has been just renovated under the name of Union of Equality. Further than this, Italy has also its own framework for implementing and supporting the rights of persons with disabilities, starting from the Disability Action Plan from 2013, drafted by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs under the Director General for Cooperation and Development Cooperation. And that has been also integrated with the guidelines on integrating the inclusion of persons with disabilities within the development cooperation and humanitarian action from 2018. That led also to specific activities dedicated to this kind of support, like the research from 2019 that you can also check from the Italian cooperation websites. Within these international and national frameworks, the action of Access Khartoum of this project Bridging the Gap operates within the sector, within the social sector, that as you can see from the pictures on these slides, operates mostly within the three main areas of intervention: promoting gender equality and women empowerment, ensuring child protection, and also supporting the rights of persons with disabilities. Under this sector, the project operates here in Sudan, considering very specific features of the country context. As you might know, the context of Sudan is a transitional context after the revolution of 2019, when the population ousted the long-lasting President Bashir. That led also to several economic crises due to exactly to the transition period. This socio-economic crisis is also still affecting the population with scarcity of basic commodities, rising inflation, and very dire conditions for specifically those parts of the population who are considered at great risk of vulnerability. So here I can see already some similarities with the case of Liberia. Within this context, the action that we have done with the project in Khartoum and in Sudan was aiming to supporting the rights of persons with disabilities, applying specific twin track approach, trying to promote mainstreaming while at the same time ensuring specific activities dedicated to the thematic focus of the country, action, which is inclusive access to employment opportunities. As you could see, the challenges were several, from the lack of reliable data. Also in Sudan, the official census is completely outdated and talks about percentage nearly 5%, while the actual percentage that has been calculated by several international institutions is nearly 50%, 15%. So also the data issue is a very actual problem also for the policies in Sudan. Furthermore, the activities of the OPDs were coming from years where their action were essentially intended as service providers without any real effort on advocacy commitment for the rights of persons with disabilities and without any real effective participation within public policies. Therefore, what we try to promote with sorry, I just lost the okay. What we try to promote with the project Bridging the Gap was to activate those mechanisms within the institutions, organizations, and also within international cooperation, so that there could be a strong advocacy movement for supporting the rights of persons with disabilities, while at the same time we try to support those specific actions focused on promoting inclusive access to employment mostly, but also to basic services, because of course we have to understand the context of Sudan, where sometimes having inclusive access to employment, it means first of all, to have inclusive access to livelihood, means to an income, and also to basic services, which are basic life. Sometimes they are basic life support for those living, especially in the rural areas. So within this framework of Bridging the Gap 2, which is funded by the European Union and co-funded by the Italian agency, the action in Sudan focused on these thematic areas that I just mentioned. I must say that the project at the global level operates in 5 different countries, and each country has a different thematic focus under the overall objective of supporting the rights of persons with disabilities on inclusive policies and equal access to basic services. In Sudan, as I mentioned, the focus was on access to employment. Therefore, we focused our activities on promoting the principles of Article 27 of the CRPD, equal access to employment, trying to address this issue at the 3 main levels. Trying to involve the international community for mainstreaming the rights of persons with disabilities, trying to support the institutional capacity to provide and to produce inclusive policies and strategies, and also supporting the meaningful participation of the organizations of persons with disabilities and civil societies on advocating for inclusive policies and strategies, operating as a controller of the public engagement, and also keeping on providing those services which are needed, while the duty bearer, the government, hopefully will take progressively more responsibility than that. As you can see, within X-Curve 2, we have this project, of course, is now closing. It has been running for the last 4 years, and now we have some other initiatives operating within the social sector, and still we kept the focus and attention on supporting the rights of persons with disabilities, trying to consolidate this commitment on supporting inclusive access to economic opportunities. At the same time, we are trying also to provide to keep on supporting this mainstreaming commitment that we have started together with Bridging the Gap. On the internal side, trying to mainstream the inclusion of persons with disabilities in all the sectors where IX operates in Sudan. And on the external side, we are trying also to involve all the international community actors, but also together this involvement together with the institutions and with the local organizations, trying to have a sort of coordination effort for supporting and for coordinating the support to the rights of persons with disabilities. And this is actually the main goal of the outcome one of the project, where we tried to bring together all the interested actors and try to coordinate all our country actions in support of having inclusive action, having a general inclusive action in Sudan. As you can see from the pictures, these are two examples of the work that we have done for the with the group of friends of persons with disabilities, the launching event, and the last, unfortunately, online meeting of the group. On outcome two, we intended to support the institutional capacity of producing and operating inclusive policies and strategies. Together with the National Council of Persons with Disabilities and the land ministries, we took some exercises together, and one of the most important is for sure the production of the report on the 10 years anniversary of the implementation of the CFPD in Sudan. This report was a joint effort with the Council and organizations in order to analyze what has been done for applying the principles of the CFPD in Sudan, producing a series of recommendations which are grouped under 9 main goals, which are intended to be suggestions for the public institutions to produce inclusive policies and strategies. And this is a joint effort between the civil society and the institutions of Sudan. Lastly, the outcome 3, it was mainly dedicated to the support of the meaningful participation of the organizations, mostly the organizations of persons with disabilities, that through dedicated sub-grants, they saw their proposals financed, proposals on specifically supporting the economic opportunities and the employment opportunities of persons with disabilities of their own organizations, divided by the different sectors and also divided by the different states in Sudan, so with a different geographic scope. And specifically 2 of them that were dedicated to, they had a very specific focus. The Sudanese Autism Organization operated exclusively in support of persons with intellectual and psychosocial disabilities, as well as persons with neurodiversity and Down syndrome. While the physical disability challengers, they exclusively operated to supporting women with disabilities. So those are exercises that have produced a notable impact by promoting the participation of over 800 persons with different kinds of disabilities to access, that had the opportunity to access different economic opportunities. The involvement of the public offices has been remarkable, since more than 120 public servants have attended courses on sensitization, disaggregation of data, inclusive policy making. At the same time, the engagement of the OPDs and the civil society organization grew very significantly. Also considering that the phase that the country is currently undergoing, which is the phase of increasing democratic process. The project also specifically supported the inclusive democratic participation. Some of the skills, the activities that have been promoted through the access were specifically directed to women with disabilities living in rural areas, which consists also in a different kind of vulnerability that we can also analyze with this kind of interventions. As you can see from the pictures in this slide, I try to summarize the main achievement or the main attainment of the activities that we have experienced here in Sudan, with specifically with the involvement of the private sector companies that provided a lot of support for training and internships for those who participated to the project activities. The attention to the gender equality and the women economic empowerment that has been mainstream to the whole project and had very specific activities, as I just mentioned, and also the opportunity to have tailored activities within the different areas and states where we operated trying to customize intervention in order to ensure sustainability and ownership of the project activities that were planned and implemented. This leads me also to the definition of the cross-cutting sectors. As I mentioned, women empowerment was one of the main topic that we try to streamline across the whole project, but also the initiative tried to have a specific attention to what is called the inclusive and sustainable territorial development, which is trying to support the awareness and accessibility of those living in remote areas. And most of the times it also interested the conflict affected areas. So that was an interesting exercise to have a diversified approach toward a unified objective, basically trying to ensure the ownership and to capitalize as much as possible from the activities that were realized. Lastly, one of the last exercises that we have conducted was to ensure an inclusive response to COVID-19. Of course, after the pandemic, the situation was quite difficult, as it was for basically the whole planet. Here in Sudan, the initial communication about the pandemic wasn't inclusive, or at least it presented a lot of challenges to be considered inclusive, as most of the communities, most of the organizations that we work with complain about not having access to inclusive information. Therefore, we supported this exercise by sharing this newsletter together with all the participants of the group of friends, partners, and stakeholders of the project. Just to close, I will leave you here the link for the website of the project and the other links for the agency institutional links. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. I think that was quite exhaustive. Thanks so much. And I just like to remind the panelists that we are actually late. The presentation was quite insightful, and especially so looking at Sudan in the transitional phase. I think there are a lot of things that we can learn from Sudan, also considering Liberia as a post-conflict country. So as I indicated, there will be a session for question and answers. So I'm sure you took down good notes so that we can ask the necessary questions. Our next presentation will be looking at emancipatory disability research experience, and that will be led by Dr. Sunil Deepak, who happens to be an expert in emancipatory disability research. And this was an activity that was part of the Disability and Startup Project in Liberia, where for the first of its kind, persons with disabilities were able to research their own issues. So Dr. Soni will be giving you updates on where we are with the EDR research, what were the main findings. But before that, I'd just like to inform you that to give a brief about who Dr. Soni is. So he has been actually working in the disability and rehabilitation sector for more than 35 years. And he has worked on disability programs in different parts of the world, in particular Africa, South America, Asia, and for IFO, also working for different international organizations, especially the World Health Organization. He acted as a senior expert, technician, in inclusive and emancipatory processes for people with disabilities in the DASU project, and he actually coordinated that research in Liberia. So without much ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. Sunil to the platform to present on the EDR process in Liberia. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Luther, and thank you everybody for giving me this opportunity to speak about emancipatory research in Liberia. I must say I'm very glad to see so many people that I know and they are there. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to say hello to all of you directly, but I'm really pleased to see you, especially the friends from Liberia and the people from Emancipatory Research in India, and then friends from Mozambique and so many other countries. Okay, let me go straight for not losing time. So, emancipatory research, I'll be talking about four areas. First, a general brief introduction about what is emancipatory research, then how did we implement this research in Liberia. Finally, the more specific about what did we find on livelihood issues and income generation in the emancipatory research, and last one, what could be the implications of using emancipatory research as a tool to accompany livelihood activities. So first, what is emancipatory research? It's a participatory research approach. Participatory research in the sense that people from communities, they participate in it. The difference is that in emancipatory research, communities control the research. Communities are trained to become researchers. They decide what to research and they do the research in the field and analyze all the data. The second thing is that emancipatory research focuses on mechanisms of how people become marginalized, why they are marginalized, and where are the barriers which stop their participation. So we have two, you can say, twin objectives in any emancipatory research. The first one is to learn about, build the knowledge about how people are marginalized, and secondly, promote empowerment of people, all the communities that are involved in the research. Now, coming to the EDR in Liberia, so in Liberia, the marginalized group was persons with disability. And that group, we work with them in communities in Bong, Nimba, and Granjede, three counties. 12 persons were trained as researchers. They were people with disability, four of them from each county, and they were identified with the help of the local organizations, and they had a 5 days long initial training and then another training of 5 days afterwards. The emancipatory research process is necessarily a long process. It cannot be a research where you go, you do something and come back. It has to be a slow process, matured by the community and implemented by the community over a period of long time. In Liberia, this process lasted between October 2018 to June 2021. It was much longer than what we had thought because of the COVID-19 situation. And during this research, the researchers looked into 12 broad areas, out of which livelihood was one. Here you can see the group of researchers who were trained initially together with the team from DASU and the reporters, supporters, supporting persons. And as you can see here, we had people from communities, some of them with severe disabilities, some of them with very different group of people. One thing I would like to point out is the small number of women. So even among the 12 researchers, we had only 4 women initially. Now, what did we learn from emancipatory research? First thing which came out was that people felt that they did not have enough information and they were lacking employ skills for earning money, for earning livelihood. Another thing which they felt was which was missing was the financial management. knowing how to do financial planning, keep bookkeeping, and all those practical skills. So people have these twin twin feeling of missing something. Second area which came out was that there were very few positive role models, which means that people with disability who had a background of poverty and who had been successful in income generation and livelihood, there were very few of them who could serve as a role model for them. The third area was related to funding, and most stories said that the funding had come from their own family or friend or some relative because institutional funding, so getting funds from the banks and getting funds from from self-help groups or other structures in the community was very difficult for persons with disability. The areas where they did the study, there were very limited opportunities for employment. So most of the time they had to think in terms of self-employment or starting some own business rather than looking for a job. Negative attitudes and lack of self-confidence, physical barriers. Usually, when we think of disability and livelihood, we start thinking of physical barriers and negative attitudes. But in reality, all these were not so significant in the findings, in the research findings. There are some examples, like a woman with wheelchair saying that she had difficulty entering the market where she wanted to sell, but they were not so common. Mostly people were talking about lack of skills, difficulty in funding, and not having employment opportunity. So, what are the implications? What other things we can EDR, emancipatory research, can add to a livelihood program? First thing is that it gave an understanding that some groups of people with disability face much bigger barriers compared to the others. So we need to be very much aware about it. And unless we are aware about it, we will think that we are running a good, successful program. But once you go into it, you will find that some group of people did not have that opportunity. And we were talking about people with epilepsy, people with mental illness, people with intellectual disabilities, people with leprosy, uh, deaf people, that was really one of the biggest group that did not get many opportunities is the deaf people. So people with communication and hearing disabilities, they were really marginalized even among other people with disabilities. The second group was women, and women uh, in community DPOs, in the community organizations, women were the majority. But in terms of beneficiaries, in terms of leadership roles, there were very few of them. Last group which they identified, the researchers identified, was that was of the distance between where you lived, your village, and the main road. And that contributed quite significantly. The further down, the more isolated people were living, they faced more difficulties in having opportunities for livelihood. Second area which in terms of implication is that we need to start from DPOs, because even in DPOs, not all the groups are properly included. So DPOs themselves need to become more aware that even they are posing barriers for inclusion of certain group of people with disability. I think that because the so many times when we are running programs of livelihood, we just go with our own ideas of our own activities. What the emancipator research in Liberia told us that when people are aware where are the barriers, they can start taking action. They can become active in doing advocacy. They can become active in going to the local leaders and saying that we need to start something. They can go and talk to the banks and say why we do not have access to the financing. So I think that a tool like emancipatory research can be very useful in terms of accompanying and strengthening whatever activities we are trying to achieve in the area of livelihood. I have a, because of time constraints, I have not gone into too much detail about the process, but in the paper I have prepared, which will be distributed to the participants, I have given much more details about it, and I'll be very happy. You will find my email in that paper. I'll be very happy to provide more information if you wish. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Dalit Sunil. Thank you very much for that splendid presentation. And like you said, I think the EDR brought a real revolution in Liberia because, as I mentioned initially, this was the very first time people with disabilities were researching their own issues. And you will be surprised because even the persons with disabilities themselves did not have a better understanding about some of the very barriers they face. So I think that one of the things that made the EDR process very much interesting is that besides just identifying the barriers, they were also looking at solutions, providing recommendations to all actors involved. So we look forward to receiving the full presentation and subsequent last presentation on this session, which has to do with economic empowerment of people with disabilities in the international legal framework. And that will be done by the president of RATES, Gianpiero Grifo. Before he does his presentation, I just gave you a brief background of who Gianpiero is. Gianpiero is a wheelchair user and an activist and defender of people with disabilities human rights at the international level. He currently serves as president of RATES and is a chairperson of the Italian Network on Disability and Development. And he's a member of the committee of the Italian Council of Ministries for planning the post-COVID-19 pandemic. He's a very resourceful person, so I'm quite sure that you'll get a lot of understanding from the work he does. Welcome, Gianpiero.
Good morning. Thank you for invitation. For the limited time, I wish to start for the advantage for society to include persons with disability in employment or in economic activity. These persons are neglected, frequently are persons that are not taken consideration as employers, but the standard at the international level speaking that this person can be producer. It can produce the development of the country. And this is exactly one of the issues that we need to take in account. Moving for assisted person from producer. And that is very important because in the world of 1 billion of persons with disability. So you imagine how is the contribution that that person can produce for the economic growth. The second level is that frequently these persons are impoverished for lack of health service, lack of the social service, and for barrier, obstacle, and discrimination. If you're thinking that the convention stress that the relationship between the person and the environment and the social attitude and the cultural attitude produce disability. This means that the participation of persons with disability enrich society and produce a very important perception about what means diversity. Diversity is a different form that now the society living the contact more nearly in the world, diversity on the religion, diversity on the culture, diversity on the person. And at the same time, human rights stress that disability condition is one of the diversity in the world. In the same time, there are advantages for persons with disability because is assume they assume that social economic role has mean a different recognition in the society. The second is the reduction the social stigma, because if I have a social role, economical role, are not considered unproductive, are not considered a health problem of my life, but I consider exactly the participation and the contribution. When I work, I am a full citizen, and I contribute with the other citizens. I have the right to speaking and to discuss about how society develop. In the same time, that is stressing the research of the emancipatory research, they are a good transmission of a positive model of participation of persons with disability, because favorize other persons with disability to understand how the possibility exists and the role model that the person included support the empowerment of this person. As you know, the convention is the standard international. It's a standard that's speaking about no discrimination, human right, enjoyment, the all universal right. And that is exactly one of the points to start to understand the international standard. Because the person with disability need to have the right to opportunity to gain a living by work, freely chosen, accepted in the labor market, and a work environment that is open, inclusive, and accessible. This means that is exactly a principle very important to stress. Person with disability can do so much form of work. And the convention article 27 speaking exactly what is the standard. Prohibit discrimination, and that is the first form to hinder the possibility to find unemployment. In the same time, favorize a lecture very different about the right, because the right need to be equal than others in a favorable condition of work, in a framework where the work is an opportunity even for person with disability. Because the opportunity to work mean in the same time that the person with disability became a person accepted, and at the same time can be utilized the trade union right on equal basis of the others. That is a point that progressively produce a change of the vision. Person with disability can do in any condition different activity in different area. And evidence that the program of the guidance, vocational guidance, placement services, vocational continuing training permit to persons with disability to benefit the same opportunity than others. Frequently that does not happen, and frequently are excluded for barrier, obstacle, and discrimination. And the possibility to work in different area mean that the opportunity need to be promoted. And at the same time, the person with disability need to have possibility in ordinary labor market with appropriate assistance of finding, obtaining, maintaining, and returning on employment, because person that working can be person with disability for incident or for different action. Evident that this standard is a standard that permit to person at different level to achieve the same result than others. Promote opportunity for self-employment is another important issue to become entrepreneurship, to develop a cooperative or starting our business. Frequently, that happens only because person receive micro grant for the ONG that coming outside of the country. I think the policy need to promote this kind of the opportunity, because as explained in different countries, a little amount of money permit to developing a startup a new enterprise. It's evident that this possibility is a form to valorize the capacity of the person. Frequently, the idea is that the person are unproductive. In reality, depending on the work that he can are involved, and at the same time the support that they receive in this field. One of the systems that at international level is developed is the quota system, and frequently are only on the public sector. Quota system mean that are identify a number of persons with disability need to be involved in the public services, in the public activity. But this recognition is not enough, because frequently exclude the high level of competence, no permit to have a concrete development of career. Other point is the developing in private sector. Even in this private sector are developed the quota system, but there are other issues that are important. In the last year, they are developing the idea of active employment. And that is one of the issues that need to include persons with disability at different levels, because the possibility to work is very large and permit to person to express their capacity and their skill. Evident that any time that person with disability are involved in an employment activity need to provide a reasonable accommodation, because frequently the workplace are inaccessible, frequently the organization of the work are not inclusive, because frequently the place of work are not adequate to the capacity of the person. It's evident that this kind of the work is a kind of work that take in account that person with disability need to make a possibility to make a work experience. This means favorize experience, stage, activity at different level in the open labor market, not in special market, not in shelter employment. That is another standard that are really clear, because person with disability can developing in ordinary context all the skill that other person can develop. It's evident that the vocational and professional rehabilitation is one of the points very important. The return to work program for persons with disability mean protect persons that become disabled during the work for accident or other issue. It's evident that the actually tools, electronic tools, permit to work at different level. We are developing during the pandemic the experience of the smart working, but the technology permit to work to blind people, permit to work all kind of the person that have some limitation. It's evident that other issue at the standard is not exploited, the young people, the servitude on the other issue like the other. Remain in different country, yet this question, and this question remain one of the points to provide the adequate protection for child and for person that are in a determinate condition. It's evident that there are other documents, is the document of International Labour Organization, is speak a decent work guide and program, that is an approach that stress that person with disability can have decent work, and frequently the ILO support exactly in the different countries specific program to favorize that. Other standard important is the Sustainable Development Goal. There are 11 reference to person with disability, but the problem is that the slogan "No one left behind" touch the person with disability too. The approach is an approach on human rights respect, connection with economic, climate change, peace, and activity to promote non-discrimination and inclusion. In particular, the goal 8, they are dedicated to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainability development and growth, and in the same time, employment at all level and decent work for all. The 8.5 stress that even the person with disability need to be beneficiary of that. The same goal 10, reduce inequality within and among the country, the point 10.2 include person with disability in empower and promote the social, economic, and political inclusion. It's evident that other issue in the development, the SDG, is the systemic themes, in particular collecting information, because the lack of information that is happening in different developing country, in there to have a policy and to know exactly the condition of person with disability. In this sense, Article 31 of the CRPD, speaking that the collection of data, like we have listened by Sunil on emancipatory disability research, need to identify, address the barrier faced by persons with disability in exercise their right. Evident that one of the issues very important is the participation. The Article 4, paragraph 3, stress that the person with disability need to be included and at the same time closely consult and actively involved in all activity related to employment, because this person this is not only a right, but is exactly a new approach. The involvement of the OPD or the person with disability expert on the issue related to their right is a convenience for all the world, because produce innovation. The regard that person have are better regard to identify how the discrimination are developed, how the barrier hinder the participation, at the same time what kind of the solution can be developed. We're speaking about nothing about us. Without us, they are concretely a response. But taking account that the person, the participation of person with disability are based on a very easy concept. The person with disability are not object of intervention, but are subject of the change, of the transformation of society. For that, this slogan at the same time is a right, at the same time is a good methodology, but at the same time is a convenience for all society, for a economical growth that include all persons. Thank you.
Thank you, Gianpero. Thank you for that presentation, specifically laying the basis on how to ensure international legal framework for economic empowerment of people with disabilities. He stressed on different issues, specifically looking at the different advantages of people with disabilities, ensuring an inclusive society, stressing the issue about the convention, looking at Article 27. He mentioned the issue about ensuring a quota system, also looking at the sustainable development goals as a key tool, and then CRPD statistics and data. So as I inform you from the onset of our interaction, we will have at least 10 minutes for questions and answer period. So now is your turn to put forth your questions. You can put in your questions in the chat room. You may raise your hands to ask questions directed to either of the panelists. And so we have at least 10 minutes dedicated for that. Thank you. Yes, Simona.
So good morning, everybody. My name is Simona Venturoli, and I'm here at Hartford Quarter among the organizers of this event. I collected one question in the chat, and so I can read this for you. This is a question from Caterina Donofrio, civil servant from Italy, and she has a question for Melanie, or maybe also for Dr. Sunil. The question is, as you told us, the project focuses on socioeconomic development processes with attention to the inclusion of people with mental health conditions. What were the emotional impacts of the COVID in such a context? So the question is about COVID and the impact that had on people with disability, specific in your experience in the project. This is the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Milani, did you get that? Hello?
Yes, I indeed got the question. Thank you for the question. Yes, I wasn't quite sure if I understood the question correctly, if it was more on the individual or in the broader context.
Well, I think it was in the broader context, looking at the impact of COVID on the lives of people with disabilities.
Well, in that sense, when the COVID or how do you say that, the pandemic started, there was a lot of commotion in the amongst the community. That's what I heard is in particular that people with disabilities were not included in information sharing. That that was for that we supported NUWAT to write how do you call that now in English? To deliver a message to the president.
Press statement.
Sorry?
I think that was a press statement.
Yes, press statement. Sorry. Thank you for that, Luther. We did it together with NUWAT to highlight certain issues that should be considered in the response, COVID response by the government in that sense. I'm hearing somebody speak, and I see Sylvester raising his hand.
Please mute your mic if you're not speaking. Sylvester.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, this is not your turn. Hello? Hello? Sylvester? Hello? Milani was still
Yes,
in
I'm
speech.
getting you.
I don't
Can I
know.
go
I'm not too
ahead?
sure whether she's completed. Yes, please go ahead.
So yeah, I'll soon finish. Also at that time, there was an initiative by the government and the World Food Programme for the distribution of food to the people with disabilities. There also came a request from NUWAT and their members if that could be supported, because in that sense, during the lockdown, it was really complicated for people with disabilities to actually receive the support, and they felt really left behind. Also, the food distribution did not reach many of them, and they were, yeah, that was a big issue. That's how it impacted them at that time.
Okay, so Jayan Kumar, I see your hands up. Dr. Kumar, welcome.
Yeah. This is Jayan from India. Quickly, I will not take more than 100 seconds. 4 points. One, first of all, my apologies for not putting up the video on. I have some issues with the WebEx, so I am only on audio. Secondly, we bring some good news from India that COVID has come down except in 1 or 2 states. And my friend, president of Karnataka DPO, he is also listening and he is also there on the meeting. His name is Cheloraj. Thirdly, I'm very glad and very happy that IFO Liberia has taken up disability research program into a scientific and emancipatory research tool, experimentation and all that. Scientific, I mean, it is a truth. Yeah, so different terms we can use, different connotations, all that we can use, but scientific means it is truth. And I'm very glad that IFO Liberia is taken the disability work to such a level. I'm very happy and appreciate all your efforts. Fourth and final point, hope you all remember the Luther, Jonathan, Phoebe, and our driver
Yes.
was Emmanuel, if I remember his name correctly. I was in Liberia for about 3 weeks, and you all helped me, and you are taking this program quite a long way in a scientific way, in scientific manner. So very glad. My regards to all of you, and please continue the good work going. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Gayan Kuman, and thanks for your kind words.
And you named me,
Lucy,
Luther, you remember Tagma, after the 1 month
oh,
training program.
thank you.
Tagba.
Yes,
Congratulations to all of you.
Lucy, I see your hands up. Lucy.
Yes, thank you. I'm joining from the Netherlands. I work for Liliane Foundation, and we have a project in that we're running right now called Work and Respect in Kenya, Ethiopia, and Rwanda. And we just started this, so I'm very interested in learning from other livelihoods projects targeting young people with disabilities. So I wanted to ask a question to Mr. Sunil Deepak about the emancipatory research. I'm interested in hearing more about the 12 researchers because I can imagine that the process of becoming trained and conducting this research has probably triggered an empowerment process within them to have some personal transformation. As you mentioned, one of the issues they noted that there are few role models, and I'd like to have your reflections on how they maybe themselves now have become role models for other people. That's one. And second, in terms of inclusion, sometimes we also exclude we don't always practice inclusion ourselves by, for example, creating separate savings groups for only people with disabilities. We want them included in skills trainings, not special education, but inclusion. But then when we look at like village savings and loans associations, these groups, often we group them together. And now, for example, in such a group of researchers, maybe it's also interesting to have an inclusive group of people with disabilities and without disabilities, so that perhaps also people in the community who are not disabled could understand the problems and could be also advocates for these issues, and also maybe link the groups together. You see what I mean, for like cohesion at a community level. So those are two questions in terms of, firstly, empowerment of the people conducting the research, and secondly, is it something you've considered or thought it might be nice to have a mixed group of both people with disabilities and people without disabilities for such a group, or for other like savings groups and so on?
Thank you, Lucy.
Yeah. Uh, in the people who were selected to be researchers, they had to guarantee that they will be able to participate over a period of 1.5 years. At the same time, these people need to travel between villages and communities, because on every theme, like livelihood, they would need to go and visit communities and talk to different groups of people with disability, different age groups, different kinds of disability, to understand where the barriers are. So that methodology places certain restrictions on who can join. Initially, we used to think that people need to have a certain education level, they need to have certain characteristics, but we found that in the end, that does not really make a difference. People who are completely uneducated, if they can have a support for writing down, they can be as good researcher as a person who has been to university. So we had mixed group, very different group, people who had moderate and severe disabilities. But some people, for example, gave up, like a deaf person who joined as a researcher. The barriers that person faced in collecting and talking to people were so big that that person decided right in the beginning. But a blind person who was one of the researchers from the beginning, he continued and he was very strong. In all of them, it was very clear to see their empowerment in the sense of their becoming people who are very vocal about it. They were more articulate. They could present their arguments in a particular way and they could speak with authorities with more confidence. So, definitely, it's an empowering process. But what we realized is also that people who face more marginalization, they need to be nurtured. They do not reach the state of empowerment easily. Even in a group of people with disability, they will speak less, they will stay behind. So when you say mix, bring together non-disabled people and disabled people together in a group, I think we need to think of power balances and how people are going to be able to contribute equally. I'm sure that persons who have taken part in a 1.5 year process and have become empowered, they can hold themselves in front of all non-disabled people. They are able to put forward their points, but they may not be able to do that right in the beginning of the process because they were used to non-disabled people always speak. Women are not speaking, persons with disability are not speaking. They have to stay silent till they learn the force that they can also bring their point. So I think in theory, things are good that all groups should be open, but we need to see to make sure that open groups are truly inclusive of everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Sunil. So because of time, we will just take one last questions. If you have additional questions, you can please post them in the chat room. So we'll take the last one from Thomas Cooper. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Luther. My name is Thomas. I'm the director of Liberia Monitors. We were involved in the final evaluation of the project, and the question that I have is about the entrepreneurs or about the business plans, and it's dedicated to Melanie and perhaps also to William if he's also listening. The big innovation is that whereas typically loans are given out, especially in Liberia and in previous projects that I know Melanie has worked with, are given out to non-disabled people, right? And so my question is, can you just talk about the difference between non-disabled people and disabled people in terms of their type of entrepreneurship? Are there many similarities? Do they perceive the loan differently? Do they perceive the work differently? How do those perspectives compare in your experience?
Thank you. So William is just next door, and then perhaps he wants to respond to that.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is William Dennis, and I'm the director for the Business Startup Center Monrovia. It's a local business development firm working in entrepreneurship and small medium enterprise development land space in Liberia. And we've been doing that for the past 11 years. Also, we are the partner on the DASU project, basically providing the business skills training and managing the access to finance program. So I'll just go straight to Thomas' question. That's a very interesting question. And over my experience working with entrepreneurs for the past 11 years, we've facilitated access to finance to businesses. Again, people who are non-disabled over the years. This is our first experience working with people living with disability in terms of providing entrepreneurship support and access to finance. So I think what I personally discovered working with people with disability is that one, they do have the commitment and honesty, and that it's very interesting because every time that we made a field visit to each of the startup, okay, they were available to meet, they were available to share the records and get the support from us in terms of how we can strengthen their internal management to be able to expand our operations. We made a special connection because again, part of our monitoring was to communicate with them on a weekly basis, and they were open to speak about challenges they face. I think there are not a lot of opportunities that they will probably see as compared to people who are not disabled, because those people, and again, I'm just saying, and just within this context, because they feel that they can move about a lot and they can scout opportunities on their own as compared to people living with disability. It's like, most of the time we reach out to them, and because we reach out to them with social opportunity, they are willing to take advantage of that. And so because of that reason, every little opportunity they have, they are committed to utilizing that. And so the arrangement with even the support of paying back those loans that we provided under the DASU project, they're highly committed. All right. This is my first experience where a business is calling me and telling me, look, I do have my repayment and I'm ready to pay. It's very interesting, and working with people who are not disabled, they never do that. I mean, one or two, yes, out of hundreds, but just working with the startups over the past 2 years, communicating with us and saying, look, we do have our repayments. We're expanding our businesses to other villages or cities within the county. All right. We're growing, and we can sit with them and talk to them about challenges and how we can resolve that. And they are always, willing to talk. So it's quite an experience for me, and I'm really happy that, in my professional sojourn, I can mention that in my career and say, look, I would choose this target over, people who don't have any disability. Like, there's no much trouble, in terms of reaching out to them. It just makes our work so easier. They're willing to learn, they're willing to communicate, they're willing to, scout opportunities with you and the guidance, in that process. I know we're gonna hear from Abigail very soon. She's one interesting person you would like to talk to, and she will share her experience. I've worked with her over 2 years, committed to the process. She's one of the entrepreneurs or the startup who've completed the repayment and growing her business. And so, just to answer that question, Thomas, it's just quite experience that, for me, is my first time, and I'm really learning that, and maybe I can utilize some of the skills and some of the learning from that to people who, don't have disability, and see how that works. But I think one of the key things is because those people think that they can move about and they can, scout all the different opportunities on their own. So they take advantage and say, oh, They don't need to fulfill their financial obligation or commitment within a particular process or a particular project. Yes, I just want to say that. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to Williams for that response. So as you have observed, we're quite late with time, and in our next session is starting in 30 minutes, less than 30 minutes. So we'll have to be very swift. So we'll move over to our next session, which has to do with mainstreaming disability in livelihood intervention, looking at inclusive business in practice. And for this session, we'll be calling on direct project beneficiaries who have felt the impact of the project to showcase the level of impact the project has made in their lives. But before that, we'll just quickly call on Chiara Chimiri, who represents the Inclusive Development Researcher Frame. Chiara was also a part of the DASU project, so she wants to also share her perspective. Before she comes, I'll just quickly introduce who Chiara is. So she holds a master's degree in development economics from the University of Florence. And she has worked in several areas, specifically in the areas of research, also focusing on disabilities. So Chiara, without much ado, I'd like to welcome you. Hi, Chiara. Chiara, we are seeing your slides. Are you getting me?
Hello. Yeah, sorry, I was not able to unmute me. Hello, everybody.
Oh.
Thank you very much, Luther, to introducing me. And I would like to introduce as well the team of the person with which I work with very briefly. So I work for the Department of Economics and Management of the University of Florence and for ARCO Research Center, which is a research center specialized in consultancy, in training services and research in different fields. Particularly, we work in these 5 units, and we provide our technical support inside development projects and many other things. More specifically for this, for DASU project, the Social Economic Unit and the Inclusive Development Unit collaborated to provide the services and in the baseline study and the inclusive business component. I would like to briefly talk in this presentation about what we did for the DASU project. And so these 3 components, basically the baseline survey, the inclusive business training and skill assessments, and the startup evaluation. Starting from the beginning, the baseline survey was conducted at the beginning of the project. And the aim of the baseline was that of analyzing the practices and experiences that could be fitted inside the spectrum of social economy organization and organizations that support social economy entities in Liberia. To do this, we conducted fieldwork research for about 4 months. And I would like to present the framework that has been created and has set behind the research itself. So in order to capture and to understand which were the current practices related to social economy in Liberia, we conducted together with a Liberian researcher from the University of Monrovia, a desk research about the legal framework that support economic entities and social entities in Liberia. And we cross it with the MS criteria, the European Research Network for Social Enterprises, in order to define a matrix that will be our reference and that will help us in understanding and mapping social economic entities in Liberia. This was the result of that is this baseline matrix that I wanted to just to show you has the theoretical reference to the project. I will not go in details, of course, but I wanted to show you how we actually understood and pinpoint and mapped the social economy organization in Liberia. Of course, as some of you might know, social economy is very wide subject, and it changes from context and cultures. So in Liberia, what we actually found at the legal, at the normative and legal context, that were not, of course, something that could be precisely fit inside the definition of social economy organization. So we based our analysis thanks to this DEX analysis, previous DEX analysis. The results are the following. So social economy organization are widespread. The most widespread typologies are related to self-help groups, international NGOs, cooperatives, and mutual societies. Most likely, the self-help group they kind of cover the typologies of social economy organization, although 90% of them are, of course, not formal. They don't have a formal recognition. The typologies of activities are mostly agriculture, petty trade, and local finance activities. However, inside this spectrum that you find in the figure on the left side of the slide, I would like to tell that 72% of these realities have a consistent inflow of profit, and incomes are rather small, and they vary from $30 to $200 per month. The typologies of funding are mostly through personal saving and grants. And one of the most consistent constraint refers as well to the lack of formal channels of funding, to the inadequate access to finance for people belonging to self-help groups, for example, and the lack of skilled workers, and small and weak linkages to the market, and a poor physical infrastructure, especially in the counties, in the counties, yes. The key customers for social economy organization are family and neighbors, and for a smaller percent, also local markets. The other typology of entity that we were able to map thanks to the baseline survey were incubators. Incubators provide activities in training and business development for enterprises, together also with some financial services. Target groups are various. We can mention vulnerable groups in general, women, youth, and persons with disabilities. A characteristic of local incubators is that of conducting cooperation with the other local authorities that are namely NGOs, other civil society organizations, and the way they cooperate is that mostly in the sharing of information and in the implementing of projects and delivering service. So the main findings from the baseline survey are those that I just presented, and so we were able to map some of the organization present in the countries. However, we can see that these organizations live inside a legal framework that is mostly loose and not binding. We discover also that the context is mostly polarized between those that are completely no profit or are referred to conventional business. So the typologies of entities that fit most in the criteria of social enterprises are basically self-help groups. However, self-help groups have several constraints related to low financing opportunities of their members, the lack of economic sustainability behind financing, or referred to donation, for example, or grants from specific projects, and as also a policy, a public policy that is not very supportive for this kind of realities, besides also infrastructural deficit. So what we arrived at the end of the baseline survey, we stated that we have not we have very rarely encountered economic entities that fit specifically in what is the definition of social economy and social business on the papers. However, we have met individuals that for their characteristics can be and in reason of their vulnerability can be classified as conducting as social businesses. Together with that, we had another finding for the baseline study refers to the fact that we were able to have a catalog, an archive of social economic organization, as well as an archive of local incubators. The baseline study was presented and during a public launch, and these are the recommendations that we came out the most. So the fact that there is the need of a policy step towards the developing specific goals and a specific economic, a specific legal framework for the life of social enterprises, the improvement of training and diversification of it on the basis of the needs of the beneficiaries. Also, the fact that the constraints related to financing and accessing to regular banking, of course, hinders the capacity of people to get also micro training. And also the other recommendation referred to vertical and horizontal cooperation between different entities, both incubators and social economic organizations. The other component of our role in the project refers to inclusive business training. This training, I will be short on it because probably it will be because we ran out of time. So we have contributed both in skill assessment training. So skill assessments are a tool through which we aim to in evaluating the employability of persons, in general vulnerable persons, specifically in the framework of the project of person with disabilities. Thanks to the project, we were able to conduct having several skill assessment sheets that have been contributed to become an archive for the inside the GPOs, but also will be a fundamental document to present for the evaluation phases of startups. The business specific training wanted to has been provided in two steps. The first and the second together in collaboration with BSc and with Williams. The aim of the training was on the side, of course, provide specific competence about inclusive business and management to the trainees, to attendants, but also to let the attendants be able to provide and administer the same types of trainings in the counties. I will pass to the last point with the startups evaluation. I would like to spend a few words about the way we decided to evaluate how startups have been evaluated. So the criteria we developed were basically these four. Was developed the innovation of the idea, so feasibility, both feasibility and new running versus new typology of business. It was evaluated the economic sustainability, so the feasibility respect to market needs, respect to cost, respect to development opportunities, and also availability of existing resources in the context. Then it was evaluated the social impact of the activity of the startups, so the creation of employment, the economic impact for the family, the economic impact for the community, and also the environmental sustainability. The last point that of evaluation was the entrepreneurial background, so the capacity of the team, the capacity and the skills, the know-how, and the inclusion and diversity of the people involved inside the startup. As I will not, as also Melanie and William already said, we were provided a microcredit system and a grant to the startups, and BSc provided a year of business development support to the selected startup. The selection saw two phases. So 38 startups presented the documents for assessing funds. 24 were pre-selected and presented their project through an interview. And then finally, 15 startups have been selected. These 15 startups reached a total of about 70 beneficiaries, and the typology of startup are basically food and non-food enterprises. The areas are in the counties, mostly in Bong, in Nimba, and in Gran Gede, and in Monrovia. This startup got financed at the beginning of, these are the name of the startups, but I think that the next panelist will be able to present it with more details. So I will I'm arriving to the conclusion. So I would like to say that at the beginning of the COVID outbreak, about 80 startups were already in operation. And of course, and most of them had already started investing the money they received and commenced their business. Of course, the lockdown heavily affected the ability of monitoring the process, but of course, both BSc and both the startups revealed extreme resilience to COVID, and new strategies to support the startups were created. So to conclude, I would like to say that thanks to the project, what I have seen through the implementation of ARCO and DISE is that there was a wider understanding of what social economy can be in Liberia and which are the realities that exist in the context. As well, the project was also contributed to improvement of competence of knowledge about social business and business with a social and environmental impact were developed, starting to be, or at least the seed of what is social business started to be implemented in the country. We experienced an advancement of competencies and also improving in skills and related to leadership and problem solving. And of course, there were an increment of sense of confidence and competence and self-worth for the participants of the selection, and so the startups members, and also a rising of economic independence and social standing inside the community and inside the family. Thank you very much. That's all for now. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Chiara, for that detailed presentation. Thanks to the colleagues from ICO and DISE for contributing to the success of the DASU project. And just as we said, I think the study was very much important. It helped set the basis for the project. And as we speak, different institutions have been requesting for the survey report. to also ensure that their programs are streamlined involving people with disabilities. So thank you very much. The next aspect will be about testimonials. We are wrapping up. Time is fast spent. It's basically hearing voices from the field, those that supported or benefited from the project. But before that, we'll just quickly hear from the CEO of the Business Startup Center, a business development firm that is currently providing business development support to our startups in the counties. So initially, you heard Williams reply to Thomas about some of the questions. So basically, he will just have a 2 or 3 minutes talk on some of the successes so far for the startups intervention. Welcome, Williams.
You're muted.
Yeah, I think you are muted.
Can you guys hear me now? So mute yourself.
Yes.
So at the moment, we have 15 startups. Luther, you want to? So we do have 15 startups, and we have about 8 that fully completed their loan repayments. So that's great. We have about 4 who's we're going to do our addendum with to finalize the repayments. So that's we're going to still work with 4. We also have 3 who we're going to probably discontinue the engagement with because there were some challenges that they face. But however, it's been quite good experience, and we're happy that we have 8 good startups who fully completed the loans and operating the business at the moment, employing people with disability and expanding the operations. So that information we'll share with our partners in the final report, and we'll continue to work with the four startups who are yet to complete, but again committed to doing that in the next couple of months. So I think from our side, we're happy that this project is successful. We can measure the impact that the businesses have on the society, in the communities, in the counties, in terms of even contributing to employment and income generation for people living with disability, and just receiving the kind of business development support from us in terms of understanding the market, understanding the client relationship, and doing the financial management, all those essential elements of business planning. So we're excited, and we look forward to continuing our engagement with I4 future opportunities. I think from our side, we are grateful. I just want to stop there.
Thank you. Thanks to Williams for that brief testimonials, and thanks for the support. So now is the now time to listen to actual voices of direct project beneficiaries, those who have felt the impact of the project. We'd like for you to please be brief, because time is fast spent. So firstly, we'll just call on Abigail Gonkanu, who's the chairleader of a local startup in Nimba County called Life is Good Enterprise. Abigail is a person with physical disability. She's a mother, a person who has withstood the test of time, looking at the different challenges she has been faced with. But thanks to the DASU project, she has been able to regain her confidence, and is now at the forefront of development in her community. So she will basically be telling her story briefly about the interaction of the DASU project, basically. Thank you and welcome, Abigail.
Thank you ever so much. My name is Abigail Konkanu. I'm speaking from Nimba County. First of all, I would like to give a short biography about myself. I am a person with a disability, and I got married in 1991. But my husband abandoned me because of my condition. Then from there, I'm also a midwife. But because of my condition, people deny me. But one good thing I know is I never lose hope. My children and I sat down, we decide what can we do to improve our life. So we started facing soap, baking bread, different things, supporting my children to go to school. Then from there, as person living with disability, I sat down and decided. I said I will be good for me to pull my disabled people together. I had 2013, I organized a disabled group. I started recruiting persons living with disability. And most people came in. We started carrying on some agriculture, like planting beans, cassava, corn, etc., etc. Later, I felt like working to Nimba. They came and visited our group. They decided to work with us. Because of unity, our project started growing. Then, after like working by, they talk about give empowerment. But the first question that they asked us, I kept it at the back of my mind, was that, will you people still be as good when Afro Liberia go? And the answer was yes. So we started working together. I forget all the first screen, I forget all we started facing soap, facing tie and die. And before then, I am a strong lady. I went to Broadway for a training. After a training, I came back and trained my group because I want for person living with disability to do things for themselves, to lead the street. So all of us came together with one man. We started producing, selling our goods. People started coming around us in a community buying from us. Later, the ASU project came. They asked us, what can you people do? We told them that we were able to face soap, Cora, liquid soap, etc., etc. So we wrote our basic proposal. By the grace of God, was successful. After the ASU project gave up loan and grant. We want to open our shop. We started selling. Community people started buying from us. With unity in one man, we started extending our business. We went to Upper Nimba. We started treating persons living with disability. We empower them and left them there so that they can do things for themselves. We went to Bon County. We treat some disabled group. We established them and we left them. From there, we went to Grand Gile. We're doing all these things so that people, so that person living with disability can move from on the street. The same way today, we in Ganta, we're sitting down to our own business center. No more going on the street to go there. The same thing we went in a various area to go empower them. And our next thing is that we want to go to Makibi. We pray. Our dream is to cover the 15 counties in Nimba County in Liberia to treat persons living with disability and take them from on the street. Because whenever you come in Nimba, it's very hard to see disabled people out there. We have our joint business, which is called Life is Good Enterprise. But in Life is Good Group, all the members have their own business. Whatsoever we sell in the shop, individual selling at their various houses. Because we don't want for people to call all liability. We don't want for people to see all on the street begging. Because when they see person living with disability outside there, they don't value you. They call you by your condition. But whenever you have your own business, you sitting down to your own place, the people know your value. They call you by your name. They no longer call you by your condition. So thank you ever so much for listening. Once again, my name is Abigail Onkano.
Thank you, Abigail. Thank you very much for that inspirational story. And I can proudly say that through the DASU project, you have promoted the misconception people continue to have against people with disabilities. Thanks for all the effort.
Yes.
Continue to do what you do best. And gradually, Liberia and the world at large will be an inclusive society. Thank you. The next aspect will be the very last. And this time around, we will be hearing from the president of Core Division for Users Hope, Reverend Bill Jala, who himself is a mental health advocate and a devoted Christian. So Reverend Jala leads Core Division for Users Hope, and this is Liberia's only mental health user advocacy group. He has been through several interactions close at national level, at international level, and is most recently an advocate for the Speak Your Minds campaign in Liberia. He also supports a startup that is being entirely run by people with mental disabilities. So with not much ado, I'd like to welcome Reverend Jala to the platform to just briefly share his story and the work that Industry Project has been doing for them. Thank you. I think you are muted, Reverend Jala. Can you please check your mic?
Reverend, you are muted. Please unmute your mic.
You are still muted. Hello, Reverend Jala. Well, I think that's technology.
Yeah, but Luther, is it possible you unmuting from your end?
Let me try. Sorry, we are trying to fix the technical problem. I think it's almost done now. He's going to use one of our colleagues' machine.
Hello.
Yes, I think we are getting you now. Please, can you please put your video on? Okay, there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry for that interruption. Well, you already know my name is Bill Jala, and I head Cultivation for Users Hope. And I want to talk briefly about the impact of disability, especially mental health disability in Liberia. We, from the background of persons living with mental health challenges, were the very last to be accepted among the disabled people groups in our country. Basically, because people felt that people from the background of mental health challenges were dangerous, were not able to be amongst people. But today we are very grateful that at least we've been accepted. And the fact that the DISU project coming into Liberia has made even that more glaring, because after the training we had with the DISU project, it helped to enhance our advocacy tools to the extent at which we were able to work along with the mental health division in our country to make things happen from our parliament, the mental health act, and the budget placed in the mental health policy was part of what we did as we benefit from the DISU project. Later on, when we started the business started training, we used the training, to empower a greater member of our organization and our members. We were awarded two loan projects, one in central Liberia and the other one with us here in Montserrado County. And in central Liberia, some of our colleagues there are in farming and then also in provision business, and they did very well. And as our loan manager said, they were able to clear the obligation with the loan. Now for us here as organic honey and vegetable production, we were able to work and not only stop at what we have planned to do, but we also injected other things that have made our uh, business even more viable, to the extent that we are employing people and paying them at the end of the month. Our business started with beekeeping and vegetable production. Then along the way, we started adding other things. We added other like the tree crop we're doing now, which is the long-term stuff. We decided we want to produce fruit crops in Liberia, because there is a limitation in fruits produced in Liberia. Most of the fruit we access on the Liberian market are coming from neighboring Guinea, Sierra Leone, and the Ivory Coast. So cultivation for Users Hope has been able to have plantains and pineapple, and our bees have colonized at least 4 of them, and we still have we from the project we got from IFO, we're able to acquire 30 beehives, and 4 of those have colonized already. And the reason of the delay, agriculture is time bound, and the time bees can go around to be colonized was the time we were out of. And so we got our loan in July, and July is not really a farming time. So we had a lot of challenges, but we braved the storm and worked beyond ourselves so that we'll make some impact. Today, cultivation can boast of, a farm in Nimba County. We have one in Bon County with a little business, and in Magibi, where IFO doesn't have a project yet, there where we have our organic honey and vegetable production. So we are very grateful for what IFO has done for persons living with disability. We'll be able to go anywhere in this country and defend our human rights because of the basic trainings that we had. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Reverend Jala, for that inspirational story. Thanks for the contribution you continue to make in the society. Well, the time is fast spent. Right now, we'll open the floor for questions and answers for at most 5 minutes, and then we'll close up on our session. You listen to all the different panelists for the second session, in particular, Chiara Chimiri, laying out the basis and presenting on the findings of the baseline research that were conducted on the social economy. You listen to the CEO of BSC providing his testimonials about the impact of the startup intervention, how people with disabilities are leading independent lives, and just lastly, listening to Reverend Jala talk about the involvement of people with mental health conditions in the DASU project. So now is your turn to ask questions. Again, you can raise your hands to be recognized, or you may send your questions in the chat room, and then we can go ahead to finalize our session. So this is going to be for 5 minutes at most. Thank you. Yeah, Sylvester, I see you raise your hands.
Yes, mine is not a question. Firstly, by way of introduction, I'm J. Sylvester Roberts. Work with AFO Liberia as the regional coordinator, supervising activities at the level of the country and also in charge of the regional office. So mine is not a question, but just maybe comment for future recommendation, especially related to the ERO research, the emancipatory disability research. Over the time, we conducted the research in 3 of the counties that AFO are working on the DASU project. But then, we who have been involved in the project, questions and concerns have been coming to us across the floor, considering that we are working with other DPOs in Montserrado, who happens to be the host of the central office of ARCO, that why is it the research also did not focus in Montserrado County when we have DPOs in Montserrado who are also involved in the project? Isn't the same issues that PWDs are researching on in the other counties, are they not applicable to Montserrado and so forth? So those were concerns coming from beneficiary and PWDs in Montserrado, of which we work. So I would just want to say in this open manner that for future intervention, if after we have to tailor EDR into other prospective projects, I would like to say we consider Montserrado, to be one of the county we can also focus with the issue of the research. Thank you.
Thank you. That recommendation is noted. Do we still have questions across the table? Yes, Benjamin?
Thank you. My name is Jamin Bara. From Organic Honey and Vegetable Production. I'm also a member of Cultivation for Users Hope. And from the EDR project, the closing, I think we from the mental health background made a recommendation that in time of research, people with mental health should be considered, because during the processing of the EDR program, we were invited, then persons with psychosocial disability were never involved in the research. So moving forward, I want to recommend that in the next project or moving forward, persons with lived experience from psychosocial disability should be included in the research project. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know whether Dr. Sunil can talk to that. That is well noted. Just to also inform you that the research, although we never had a person with mental health condition performing the role as a researcher, but we also did a research looking at the challenges people with mental disabilities faced.
Yeah.
But I think, okay, so Dr. Sunil is here. I think he can respond to that.
Yeah, I think, no, Benjamin is absolutely right that it's very important to involve people with mental health issues in the research. And at the same time, we have to acknowledge that this is a real big challenge. And challenge is not just in the willingness of the researchers to listen to the voices of people with health conditions, mental health conditions, but there are deeper issues. And if you remember, there was one specific meeting of emancipatory research on people with mental health illness, mental health issues. Bill was present in that meeting. And yet, if I look at what was discussed in that meeting, I have to acknowledge that we were able to get very few testimonies from people with mental health conditions in that meeting. Majority of the participants were people with epilepsy. And it was not so, yeah, so I don't know. I think you are right, but maybe we did not find the right way in the emancipatory research to involve and engage the persons with mental health conditions. We tried, but it was not very successful.
Thank you. Jayan Kumar, I see your hands up.
Again, just two things. Once I have posted my email ID and the phone number, you can share more information with regard to disability research and emancipatory research. You can share more information, and I can share and contribute better also. Secondly, once again, Luther and all of you, congratulations taking this scientific researcher forward. Wishing you all the best. Please do stay safe and take care. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions, feedbacks? Yes, Sylvester again. Lastly.
Yeah, Luther, my comment is to attend our first session, the presenter from Sudan, our brother from Sudan. You know, during a presentation, there's a point he really stressed and that really caught my attention, especially where he said they were able to have about 12047, you know, train on inclusive policy and all a national strategy. I think that was something that really catch my attention. And AFO as an institution, especially in Liberia, I think it's something that we could, you know, tap into and see for future intervention. What could we do? Because public servants, especially from both government and private institutions, I think they play a very key role when it comes to the issue of inclusiveness. So when we're talking about the issue of inclusion concerning persons with disabilities, the key actors, the public servant, be it from government and private institutions, who are not recognized to begin to mainstream the issue of disabilities into their own people we could go out for to see how to include them in those kind of training and so forth. So I would just want to thank him for those kind of perspective. And then we'll also like to maybe go forward with him to see what were some of the best practices they put into place in ensuring that those kind of interaction were very successful. And then probably in future we'll follow suit to ensure that the issue of inclusion on persons with disability become more realizable and so forth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sylvester. I think that presentation from Daniel also caught my attention because especially looking at Sudan as in the transition, you know, I was also thinking how receptive the local authorities were. I mean, in terms of making sure that the different programs that they implement are successful. So perhaps you could just throw a brief light on that, and we can close up.
Yes, thanks, Luther. If I understood correctly, because unfortunately I had some problem with connections and it was a bit disrupted, I think the points were on the institutional support that we provided through the project. If that was a point, I can just briefly mention that the main activities, the main action that we've done with the institution has been revolving around supporting the role of the National Council for Persons with Disabilities, which is one of the institutions that is also comprised and required by the convention. Our role was to support and to dedicate technical assistance to the Council as the coordinating institutions for all the questions, all the strategies and policies related to supporting the rights of persons with disabilities, and also the training that has been mentioned to over 120 public servants involving more than 20 public offices. It was done with the coordination and with the technical assistance of the National Council. Basically, the activities, the wide range of activities that we have supported as a training as training sessions for the public institutions, they were comprised into this coordination activity of the council, and they involved all the technical units and the focal points from different land ministries, involving institutions from both at the national, federal, and at the state level. The idea was to more than providing training to specific person. The idea was to have strategies in place so that each of those offices they might know what are the requirements, what are the guidelines for providing for supporting inclusive policies, even if the staff trained might move to other offices. Unfortunately, in Sudan, as in other countries which we experienced, the staff turnout has a very high rate. So a lot of the servants trained, they found themselves reallocated very soon. So the idea was to provide an experience, provide a strategy, so that the public office itself has a strategy for promoting training on supporting inclusive policies and strategies. That is why the high level participation showed up in the documents, and that is why we decided to have this wide range of activities, so that we try to touch all the necessary aspects of supporting the institutions on inclusive policies and strategies. I hope this short point clarified or provided information that were needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Daniel. So on that note, we'd like to come to an end to our session. Thanks to all of you for the technical and experience feedbacks that you've shared. We took good note of them, and we hope to utilize some of the different strategies that you are working on to work for an inclusive world. Just to inform you that this was my first international experience, so I hope I did my best. Thanks to all of you, and let's work together for an inclusive world. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Because they do well.
Thank you, Luther.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.
Bye bye, grazie. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao from Brazil. Bye bye.
Oh, obrigado.
Bye
De
bye,
nada.
Brazil.
Tchau, tchau.
Oh, yeah. Foi bom. Obrigado. Thank you very much. Was good.
Grazie. Complimenti.
Grazie. Obrigado.
Everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.